By 3 years old, your toddler has watched you cut her food into shapes, bargain for two more bites, and grate zucchini into the brownies to smuggle vegetables past her. And she still eats nothing but pasta. Every one of those moves at the dinner table is the exact thing turning her into a picky eater. There are 8 of these mistakes, and number 4 is the one you're probably making tonight without realizing it. Mistake number 1, the two more bites bribe. Picture the standard scene in your kitchen tonight. Your kid's plate has 3 things on it, she eats the pasta, and she ignores the broccoli. So you make the deal we all make. 2 more bites of broccoli, then she can have ice cream. She chokes the broccoli down with a face like she's been poisoned, and you hand over the ice cream feeling like you finally got her to eat her vegetables. But what you taught her at that dinner was the opposite lesson. There's a study where researchers offered preschoolers a yogurt-based drink they'd never tasted before. One group of kids was promised a reward for trying it, and the other group was just asked if they wanted to try something interesting from another country. Both groups tried the drink that day. But weeks later, when the researchers came back with the same drink, the bribed kids said no thanks, while the kids who were never bribed said yes, please. The reward had taught the first group that there must be something wrong with the drink, because otherwise nobody would be paying them to drink it. So every 2 more bites deal you make at dinner is teaching your kid that vegetables are the punishment she survives to earn the reward. After enough deals, she's learned to see broccoli as just the cost of getting to the ice cream. Mistake number 2, the all-day grazing trap. By 4 in the afternoon, your toddler is staring you down across the kitchen and saying she's hungry. So you give her a handful of goldfish crackers to tide her over until dinner. She perks up immediately, the meltdown gets averted, and you feel like you handled it well. Then dinner comes around at 6, the pasta and vegetables are on the table, and she pushes the whole plate away because she isn't hungry anymore. A friend of mine had this exact loop with her 4-year-old daughter every day for a year. The pre-dinner snack to prevent the meltdown was the thing creating the dinner refusal, which created the next afternoon's hunger spiral, which led right back to the next bag of crackers. In France, kids eat at 4 set times. There's breakfast in the morning, lunch around noon, an afternoon snack called the goûter at about 4 p.m., and then dinner. That's the whole eating schedule for the day. Between those times, the answer to I'm hungry is dinner is in 30 minutes. Not because French parents are cruel about it, but because they understood something we keep missing. A child who's been snacking for 2 hours straight can't physically be hungry for a real meal. If your kid has been grazing on crackers and fruit pouches and cheese sticks since 2 p.m., she didn't just refuse dinner. She was never going to eat dinner. Her stomach was already full of beige snacks before she ever sat down. Mistake number 3, the iPad propped against the salt shaker. Bluey is playing on the screen. Your kid is mechanically opening her mouth between episodes, and you're finally getting to eat your own food while it's still warm. I get this one because I've done it myself plenty of times. When you're alone with multiple kids and you just need everyone to eat without anyone screaming, the iPad is the path of least resistance. Eating in front of a screen teaches the body to ignore its own fullness signals. The kid keeps shoveling food in while her brain is tracking the show instead of tracking the food. It's the same reason adults blow through an entire bag of chips during a Netflix episode and feel surprised when the bag is empty. For toddlers, who are just learning what hungry and full feel like in the first place, this is the worst possible time to teach them to eat without paying attention. You're short-circuiting the internal signaling system they're trying to build right now. Just sit down at the table and eat together, even if the meal only lasts 15 minutes and half the food ends up on the floor. The act of eating, while paying attention to the eating, is the entire lesson she needs. This next one ended the dinner battles in my house faster than anything else I tried. Mistake number 4, the pre-plated meal. When you put dinner in front of your toddler tonight, you'll probably hand her a plate that's already arranged for her. The chicken is cut, the vegetables are portioned, and the pasta's already mixed with the sauce. You did all the work. She just has to eat it. And she'll push most of it away. Try putting an empty plate in front of her instead. Put the bowls of food in the middle of the table and let her serve herself. Or, if she's too small to manage the serving spoon, let her tell you what she wants on her plate and how much of it. A mom I know tried this with her 4-year-old son, who'd been picking at every dinner for years. The first night she did the empty plate thing, he spent the whole meal saying things like maybe the potatoes would taste good with some string beans stuck in them. He scooped half the bowl of mashed potatoes onto his plate, then had to be reminded to leave some for his sister, and he didn't even ask for dessert at the end because he was full. It was the exact same dinner she'd served 100 times before. There's a reframe I read once about kids and food that simplified everything for me. The parent's job is to decide what gets served, when it gets served, and where it gets served. The kid's job is to decide whether she eats it and how much. When you pre-plate her food and dictate how many bites she has to take, you're doing both jobs at once. And she'll fight you for hers, because what goes in her body is the only thing in her entire 2-year-old life that's hers to control. Coming up, The mistake you're making by Tuesday night this week, the one we're trained to think is clever parenting, and the smallest move you make all day that does the most damage. Hit subscribe so you don't lose the rest of these. So let's keep going from here. Mistake number 5, the short order cook trap. By Tuesday night, you've already made dinner 3 separate times. You made the actual dinner for the adults. Then, because she wouldn't eat it, you made her a peanut butter sandwich. And then, because she dropped half of that on the floor, you cut up some apple slices to round out her plate. You keep doing this because you don't want her going to bed hungry. The cost is something you can't see at dinner tonight. Every time you swap her plate for the easier option, you're teaching her that dinner is a negotiation that tilts in her favor every time. She doesn't need to learn to eat what's on the table, because the table will rearrange itself around her preferences. The advice and feeding books I've read flips the standard dynamic. You cook one dinner, everyone at the table gets the same thing, and there's no second meal being assembled at the kitchen counter for the 4-year-old. If she doesn't want the fish, the answer is okay, eat the rice and the carrots, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. I'm not saying you should let her go to bed starving. You can offer a simple alternative if she truly hates what's served, like bread and cheese, or a hard-boiled egg, or some fruit on a plate. But it's the same simple alternative every time. No new dishes invented for her on the spot. That simple alternative protects her from going to bed hungry, while the non-negotiable nature of it protects you from running a restaurant. Mistake number 6, the hidden veggie smuggle. You've definitely seen those sneaky veggie cookbooks. The ones that show you how to grate zucchini into the brownies, blend cauliflower into the macaroni and cheese, and hide pureed spinach inside the meatballs. The whole genre exists because a generation of parents decided their kids would never knowingly eat vegetables, so the only way to get nutrients in was to smuggle them in undetected. If your kid won't eat broccoli, hiding it in a muffin feels like a parenting hack. She got the fiber in her body and you won the round at dinner time. But the win was an illusion. She still doesn't know what broccoli tastes like. She still won't eat it when it shows up on her plate at her grandma's house. And now she's slightly suspicious of every food you put in front of her, because the last muffin tasted weirdly green. There's a book I love called French Children Don't Throw Food by an American mother who raised her kids in Paris. She puts the philosophy this way: the whole point of feeding kids vegetables goes way beyond getting the vitamins into their body once. It's about teaching them, slowly, over hundreds of meals, that this is what spinach tastes like, and that spinach is something you eat. Hiding it cheats your kid out of the actual education. The opposite approach is what feeding experts call exposure. Parents are coached to describe each vegetable as it's served, talk about its texture and color, and ask the kid what the carrot reminds her of, so the food becomes the conversation rather than the obstacle. The smuggle solves tonight's dinner, but it doesn't teach her anything about food that lasts past dessert. You're raising a person who needs to know what spinach tastes like for the next 80 years of her life. The smuggle doesn't teach that. Mistake number 7, giving up after she refuses it twice. You served roasted carrots last Tuesday and she refused them. The next week you tried again and she refused them a second time. So you filed it away as she doesn't like carrots and stopped serving carrots. This one quietly shrinks her food world for years to come. Because the actual research on toddler taste says a new food often needs to be offered 8, 10, sometimes 15 times before a kid decides she likes it. Not full bites either, just simple exposures. Sometimes she only looks at it on the plate, sometimes she touches it and pushes it away, and sometimes she takes one suspicious nibble before spitting it out. All of those count as exposures that build her palate. That same book earlier talks about the official French government feeding handbook for new parents, which explicitly tells them not to give up on a food after the kid has rejected it 3 or more times. You keep offering it instead, steamed one week, with a little sauce the next, and mixed into pasta the week after that. The kid eventually comes around to liking it. Compare that to the American playbook. The kid says no twice. We swap her plate for chicken nuggets, and we decide she's just not a vegetable kid. We remove the food from her life before her palate ever had a chance to develop a taste for it. By the time she's 5 years old, the only foods she'll touch are the 4 or 5 we surrendered to. Pick one vegetable you've given up on entirely, and put it back on the table next week without making a thing of it. Then again the week after that. Let the repeated exposure do the work over time. Every other mistake on this list happens at the dinner table. The last one doesn't, and it's the one she'll carry into adulthood. Mistake number 8, calling her a picky eater out loud. You're at a friend's birthday party. Someone offers your kid a slice of pizza and she turns her face away. So you, embarrassed in front of everyone, laugh it off and say she's such a picky eater, she doesn't try anything new. Your kid heard every word of that. Toddlers are watching us all the time to figure out who they are, and their entire sense of identity is being built out of the words we use about them in front of other adults. When you describe her as the picky one at parties, in the carpool group chat, and to grandma on the phone, you're doing more than venting about your week. You're telling her who she is, and she's been listening this whole time. A friend of mine used to casually call her 3-year-old daughter shy anytime someone tried to talk to her at the playground. She meant nothing by it at all. Within about a year, That little girl was hiding behind her mother's leg every time anyone said hello. And that mother was wondering when her bubbly toddler had become so anxious in public. The label became the kid. So the small fix here is to stop saying she's picky out loud, especially in front of her. If someone asks why she didn't eat the pizza at the party, say she's still figuring out which food she likes or she's working on it right now. Or you can just shrug and change the subject. You don't owe anyone a diagnosis of your child. The kid you describe out loud is the kid she becomes. The rap. All 8 of these have something in common. Every one of them is love showing up at the dinner table in a clumsy way. The bargaining because you care about her nutrition. The goldfish handout because you can't stand to see her hungry. The pre-plated meal because you want this to be easier on her than it was on you. Even the picky eater label slips out at parties only because none of us know how to gracefully explain a tantrum to a stranger holding a slice of pizza. You're not failing as a mother. You were just never given the playbook. Pick one of these to change this week. Just pick one mistake to start with. The dessert bribe, or the empty plate, or the 8-time exposure rule. See what happens by Friday night, and then come back next Monday because I'm doing one of these every week. The things nobody warned us about raising small humans, and what to do instead. I'll see you next Monday.